Bob was not an exceptionally tall man, but he was a giant of a person. His aura, his personality, his presence, everything about him was gigantic. He really, I mean, when he walked into a room, you know, it just lit up, you know. There was a magic about him which is I've never seen. It was unbelievable. And I learned that it's something that you're born with. It's you're given those things. You can't learn it, you know. You can't learn to be a singer, you can't learn to be a painter. You either have it or you don't have it. Of course you can go to, you know, and learn a few tricks of the trade, but the rest of it is about, it's magical. My meeting with Bob Marley was very, very special in terms of, I was in my last year at school and very much into photography. I knew I wanted to be a photographer. I was also very much into music. And I read in Melody Maker that he was coming to do his first tour of England. So I decided to go down to Speakeasy Club, which is this club in the West End of London. And so I didn't go to school that day. And I waited and waited and waited. Eventually he and the Wailers turned up, which is Peter Tosh and Bunny Wailer and the band. And I walked up to him and said, "Could I take your picture?" And he said, "Yeah, man, come in." And so I went inside the club, and while they were doing their sound check, and you know, and they had breaks, he was asking what it was like to be a young black kid in England. And I was asking what Jamaica was like, because I have very little memory of Jamaica, because I left very young. And he took to me. And he told me about the tour and said, you know, asked me if I'd like to come along. So I said, yeah. So this is where it all began for me. This image was taken at the Speakeasy Club. What I love about this shot, it's got a very soulful vibe about it. He could be like Benny King or any one of those soul singers in that sense. He's got a jazz feel. And I call this one Soul Rebel. Next morning, I packed my sports bag as if I was going to do sports at school. I went to the hotel. And in those days, there was no tour bus. I jumped in a Ford Transit van. And the adventure began. And this is where he's looking back at me and say, "Are you ready, Dennis?" And this is where I got into the van and we hit the road. The photographs all range from that very first meeting from the Speakeasy Club, which was 74, right through to 1980, 81, which is the last time I saw him. And he covers everything, as I said, from that first gig to that first tour through to the mid of his success, to the height of his success, to the very end. Now this is where I learned what the name of the band The Doors meant on that first tour. And he said to me, "Let me show you how to smoke a spliff, Dennis." And that's on the cover. This is on every student's wall. And what I mean by the thing about The Doors was, I remember after smoking with him one day, I heard bells in my head, and I realized that basically what The Doors meant. That's when every door in my mind just went and opened, and I've never been the same since. Yeah. These images, which are become iconic, have been seen in many, many places. A few places where I wouldn't like them to be seen because in some ways they're being bootlegged in that way. For instance, that very famous one of him smoking. I mean, if I got a 1 cent for every T-shirt that's been bootlegged, you know, I could buy LA, literally. So they've been seen in magazines, some of them been used on album covers, reissues, and in different shapes and forms in that sense. It's kind of funny with that particular Marley one. I kind of don't have much control over it. And then somebody once said to me, you know what, it belongs to the people. And I kind of understand that in some sense. So, you know, I'm happy with that in that way, you know. Although it'd be nice to get the pennies. This one's called Waiting in Vain, and he's backstage. So this is a very quiet moment amongst us. We had this closeness where I was allowed backstage, and you know, he would talk and smoke and just get himself together. I think one of the things that maybe drew me to Bob, and maybe without Bob even knowing as well, I never knew my father in the same way he never knew his father. And I had no relationship at all with having a father around. He instilled in me that sort of confidence in myself to be a photographer, because he told me that, you know, you're always going to be told you can't do what, you know, but you can do it. What you have to do is believe in yourself, you know, you've got to have that confidence. And he instilled that in me. So I learned a lot from him in that sense, and I think he really also realized that I understood what he was trying to portray and how to project himself. Because when he saw those early photographs of mine, he saw that I was able to capture what he was trying to put over. Now this gig was the gig which really set him up, which was 1976, 77. The Lyceum was ram-packed. There were people trying to get on top, in by climbing on top of the roof, trying to break in. And one of the things that happened was it was so hot inside that when the body heat, you know, rose and hit the ceiling, it came down like it was raining, and all the rastas in the room just went, "Ja!" Because it was like a phenomenon. That was unbelievable scenes that went on. And again, he had this way of, like, he would put his guitar like it was a gun, and he would just run across the stage like that, run across like this, you know. Incredible form, and this is where you could, and I love this shot because when you've got that movement, you know, and then you got him in flight. He went on that stage and he just took it apart because he knew this was the beginning, this was the opportunity, and he took it. When Bob Marley was at the height of his success, he was bigger than Jamaica. He made Jamaica, every revenue literally that came out of Jamaica was because of Bob Marley. I've traveled as far as Tibet, and I've been up in some mountains, and there they are. There's images of him, you know, my images of him, you know, and I'm looking at it, you know, and they say, "Oh, where are you from?" And I say, "Jamaica." They say, "Oh, Jamaica, where?" I said, "You know Bob Marley." "Ah, Jamaica, cha-cha." They call it cha-cha because they're cha-cha, cha-cha, you know. And that's what he's done. He has put Jamaica on the map in the minds of people. All you have to say to people if they don't know where Jamaica is, Bob Marley, and instantly they connect. This one is called Natural Mystic. This is actually the first time this one has been unveiled in this form. The image is an image taken from 1977, but what I've done now, I've played around with it quite a lot, and I've incorporated various things from his religion, like you've got the Coptic crosses here and there, and you've got some Ethiopian religious scriptures, and also some very ancient Ethiopian images. It's to depict the song where it says, "There's a natural mystic blowing in the wind. Many will have to suffer, many will have to die. Don't ask me why." It's one of my favorite songs. And I just love the way he's staring at you. You know, it's like he's looking straight at you, asking you if you know where you are, who you are. Every picture in the exhibition is a story, and every story there is a magic to it. That was the thing about Bob and I. we're always what they call in Jamaican reasoning. You know, we were smoking a spliff and he'd be jiving me about being a, you know, black British kid and whatever. He said, you don't know Jamaica, man. He said, come on, Jamaica, man, you know, in that patois way. So, what do you know about Jamaica? That's a big English, man, you know, kind of way. And, you know, that kind of thing. And then suddenly he just said, yeah, you know, let me show you how to be free, Dennis. He just jumped up and just started pulling his hair. And there's 3 frames, you know. All of them in the exhibition is about that experience, about being on a one-to-one around him and waiting for him to do or say what he was going to say. Tragically now, this one, which was the last photograph I ever took of him and the last time we'd ever sat together. And what happened was, he was in London, I got a phone call and I went to see him. And he was staying in an apartment in London. I went to see him. And when I walked in, several things. For the first time, he was on his own. Normally, Bob was never on his own. There was like a million people around him. Laughter, noise, music, but he was just on his own this time. And we sat together, and there was no jiving this time. He was just, he was talking and he was like questioning his success. I've never seen him like that, never in a million years. I just couldn't believe it, you know, like Bob Marley questioning his success and himself. And then he picked up the guitar and started playing. And I didn't realize, but he was playing to me a Redemption song, which I must have been one of the first people to hear it, which turned out to be one of the last songs and one of the last greatest songs he ever wrote. And then he left. And I didn't realize that basically he was very sick. No one knew how ill he was. And he was on his way to Germany for the operation to try and save his life. But if you look at it, there's no electricity anymore in the hair, in his locks. The seams, the vibe in his face is gone. His fingers, everything about it, it's, you know, it's gone. But I never realized how bad everything was in that sense. And it was the last time I ever saw him. The last image I ever took of him.
Native Wayne Jobson just came to check out my good friend Dennis Morris's amazing, you know, kind of collection of all the great early Bob Marley stuff, of course, which my favorite photograph is the Lyceum shot. And that's the kind of night where the world kind of discovered Marley's magic. That night at the Lyceum, when he did the No Woman to Cry, which became the single, and when he went to got the crowd chanting, wo yo yo yo, that was the kind of definitive moment in Marley's career that really, as a live performer, that lifted him to another level. And that's why the Live at the Lyceum album is so brilliant, and that's why that was such a big hit there. So I met Dennis in Jamaica, like in the late 70s, and then when I went to England, he's the one that hooked me up in England. And so I got there and I didn't really know anybody, and he introduced me to Johnny Rotten. And from then, he just had this magic about him. His photography had something special in it, because two people can take the same photograph and it looks completely different with the same camera and the same setting. But because photography is a magic thing, there's a kind of spiritual vibe that flows through the photograph. And when somebody who knows what they're doing and has a spiritual connection with the subject takes the picture comes out better than somebody who doesn't know.
It's always very emotional when I see my dad's stuff, but especially when I see it from someone that was actually, you know, physically there experiencing moments. It does. That's why I don't have a favorite, because they all show me different expressions, different, you know, different feelings, different emotions are in all the pictures, and I love it. And I think that's because Dennis was there with him, you know, all the time. The photo that's not here, and really why I really wanted to come here, is because he took one of the only pictures of my dad with my mom It's not here right now, but it's the only one I've ever seen, and I love it, so I really had to come just so I could actually meet him today. It's from one of the sessions that is here right now, and I guess my mom was there with him, so she kind of came in and they hugged, and it's a really happy picture, and I love it so much, just because it's the only picture. I don't have a picture with my dad, and to see that was pretty amazing for me, and to meet him too was pretty amazing.
These two pieces were done by my friend Shepard Ferry, and it's from the shot called Duppy Conqueror. There's various intricate pieces within the work which is related to Bob. You've got that Kingston there, the lion. It's very subtle, and little tapestries and little pieces of graffiti, music of Jamaica as political slant. There's little things in there, and I think it's amazing what he's done to the image to bring it to another level, to another area from what it is from there to there. When I was coming out of school, I told them I wanted to be a photographer, and they looked at me and said, "Don't be stupid, there's no such thing as a black photographer, you know, it's impossible." But meeting Bob Marley, he said to me, "They're gonna tell you that, but you know what? You can do it. All you gotta do is believe in yourself and you can do it." And then one of the other things he said to me, "Do you realize you're a beautiful tropical plant that's been uprooted and replanted in a concrete soil? Do you know how strong you have to be to push through? You've got to be pretty strong, you know." And I've always kept these things in my mind, and these things have always kept me pushing on through.